when you work with death, you can't help but be emotional about it. You can't help but have some empathy. That's only human.
From KCRW, this is Here Be Monsters. And sometimes at the beginning of the show, we use this spot to give a little warning about the content of the upcoming episode. And I was thinking about it for this episode, and I couldn't for the life of me think of a concise way to give the right kind of warning. And that's because there's nothing overtly terrible that happens in this show, nothing that absurd. But it's just like earlier in the season, we had this episode where I wound up taking a big bite of raw asparagus. And after that aired, a couple people wrote in to be like, hey, that's a really obnoxious sound. There's not even any chewing in this episode, but I think that's the warning. Like, if you found that sound of raw asparagus to be really obnoxious, then this episode is going to be 5 times worse. On the other hand, if you didn't mind that sound, then I think you're going to really enjoy this episode, because there's all these really beautiful, delicate sounds of this here parrot being slowly and meticulously disassembled. All right, there's your warning. Enjoy the show.
So I'm sort of peeling the skin away, and it's kind of like, I hesitate to call it a pulling motion. It's kind of like the motion you do to take off a stocking, like a very delicate silk stocking, like the nicest stocking you ever have had in your life that you don't want to rip. That's what I think skinning a bird neck is like.
Here Be Monsters, the podcast about
Knives, a scissor, picks, dental tools.
the podcast about
the unknown.
Testing to see if it's recording. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My name is Divya. I'm a taxidermist in New York City. I'm thawing out a small bird in the sink. And now I'm taking the bird out of the bag. So I'm putting my gloves on. And now I'm putting a fresh new blade on my scalpel. And I make the incision as small as possible because this is a small bird. He's a really small type of parrot. And he's a really beautiful bird. He has an orange belly. He has yellow and green wing feathers and a little red and yellow and orange head. He's really, really beautiful. So yeah, the first step here is making the incision. So I've parted the feathers on the chest down the center, and that's where I make the incision. So here we go with our incision. So after that incision is made, I'm peeling the skin away really gently, and I'm going to work my way down to the hip joints. So that was the joint being cut. This is the sound of some of the skin peeling away. I guess I'm most often misunderstood in that people think because I do taxidermy that I'm a disgusting person and that I hate animals or that I wish to inflict cruelty on them, when really taxidermy is my way of helping others appreciate an animal, helping myself appreciate an animal more, and kind of immortalizing it so that it can live on past the inevitable, which is death. So now that both legs are sort of removed or moved out, I'm now going to separate the tail from the body. So I'm just sort of moving right past the vent, which is just a very polite way of saying exit hole, or the hole where poop comes out. But you want to make sure that you do this part as cleanly as possible. And so I'm moving past the vent there. And there we go. And so now I'm kind of grabbing the shoulder joint here and I'll dislocate it. Now I'm peeling the skin down. Dislocating that shoulder blade, separating the wing from the body. There isn't really a lot of blood involved in the taxidermy process. Blood is more of an issue with like fresh roadkill or something like that. Or sometimes certain animals will have a bit of hemorrhaging. Like right here on this bird, there's a little bit of hemorrhaging by the head. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. So I'm going to skin out the ears. So I'm kind of cutting the tissue away from the ear. Now I'm separating the skin from the eyes. I have kind of weird hands. My hands have my palms are small, but I have these like long skinny fingers. And when I was younger, you know, kids would make fun of me and say like, oh, you have ET fingers. But then when I went to art school and started doing sculptural stuff, and when I started sewing and doing things like that, I realized like my fingers are amazing little tools, because they're things that are really like fiddly and kind of annoying to get to. Like when I would sew and do like beading projects and things like that, I was always pretty fast at them because I had these long skinny fingers, and it kind of feels like, who's making fun of who now with my with my weird fingers? So I can see and feel that the skin has all the fat, sinew, and all this sort of gunk on it that has to be cleaned off in order for me to properly preserve it. I don't like it when people say stuffed animal or whatever. It seems so crude and so disrespectful. I'm going to cut the last vertebra of the neck right where it meets the head, so that only the head is attached to the skin. So here's that cut. And that sound was the body dropping onto my tray, and I've got the skin here. So all the meat has to come off of the skull. So, and to remove the meat, I use knives, a scissor, picks, dental tools, just anything. Anything that will get the meat off. So I'll remove the eyes. I'll custom make eyes for this beautiful pet. Now I'm cutting a hole in the back of the skull to remove all the brain matter, because if that brain is left in there, it will start to smell really bad. And I'm using a small tool. It's called a brain scoop. It's a long-handled metal tool, about 7 inches long, with a little sort of spatula tip, and it's used to scoop out brains. I love animals so much that I could spend hours and hours, I could spend days without talking to another person and just being with animals, whether they're my cats, my birds, my snake, or just being in my workshop working on taxidermy, kind of being with animals in all of their states. A lot of times people say, oh, cool, like, what did the brain look like? Is it this little, they're assuming, I guess, something that kind of looks like a pink piece of cauliflower. But brains kind of turn into mush after something passes away. The brains really they're mostly water, so they don't stay intact, I think. Now I'm scraping some more meat off the skull. And yeah, I guess sometimes I do think about my own mortal body, watching and working on other bodies. I think of my own. I think that's only natural. So I'm pretty satisfied with how clean it is for the first round. Now I'm going to wash the skin. This will be the first wash. I'm using a degreaser soap and lukewarm water to kind of release some of the fat, get any of the blood stains out, and just clean the skin. Now that my bucket is full of water, I'm going to agitate the skin. People might think that I relish in death, or that I enjoy death, or that I have no respect for life or care for life because of what I do, because of being a taxidermist. But I do taxidermy because I value life and because I know death is unavoidable, but I'm trying to make something from it.
Divya Anantharaman runs Friends Forever Taxidermy in Brooklyn. Over on our website, we have a picture of Divya's brain scoop and a picture of her holding a very fancy Himalayan pheasant. We're at hbmpodcast.com. We found out about Divya through her friend and colleague Erica Harada, who's also an incredibly skilled artist. She also does a lot of work with death. Anyways, Erica wrote us an email to introduce herself and say, "Hello, I know a thing or two about taxidermy. Do you want to talk?" And of course we said yes. If you ever want to email us or call, we're at hbmpodcast@gmail.com and 765-374-5263. My name is Jeff Entman. I produced this episode of Here Be Monsters with help from Bethany Denton. Here Be Monsters is a part of the Independent Producer Project from KCRW, where our manager is Kristen Lepore, and our editor is
Something that kind of looks like a pink piece of cauliflower.
Nick White. Music from Cirocell and Phantom Fauna. Thanks for listening. More episodes soon.